Hey guys, in this video I'll be showing what exactly goes into making a cover for a comic volume. As my comic is almost finished, it's time to get the cover done, something I prefer to do at the end rather than at the start of the comic book making. The first thing to do is making sketches and thumbnails for your cover. While it isn't necessary, it's easier to have it relate to something that happens in the volume or chapter. This doesn't have to be very literal. For example, if you feel like the story was very energetic vibe-wise, you can go for something crazy with your cover. Meanwhile, if the subject has something to do with cats, you could place a huge cat on the cover. I'm doing a mix of both. These were very early sketches I made before I actually started cleaning up the comic, so they're very rough but generally get the point across. Next up is cleaning the sketches. I made a few new ones digitally and also cleaned up the ones I made on paper. I wasn't satisfied with how this one turned out and had a different idea, so copying the canvas, I worked on it some more and changed a few things to have it more to my liking. Then I made two thumbnails based on the sketches I've shown earlier. Locking in gray tones like I did is optional, but I think it works well in putting emphasis on certain places, and it already hints at what I want the shadows and lighting to look like. To make these look less flat, I add gradients to further emphasize. My general way of doing this is putting a black gradient from either the bottom or top and then having a white gradient opposite. After I have my thumbnails, I can get to either picking the sketch I want to go with or clean these up some more if I'm not sure which one I want yet. I had trouble picking between two sketches, so I started cleaning the one I was iffy about some more to get a better look. Eventually I did like this one more and decided to go on with it. Since my sketch is clean enough for my liking, I'm starting on the line art. If your sketch isn't clean enough to easily draw lines over it, you might want to clean it some more. This is the last stage where you can easily adjust things and make major changes. While you can always change things later on, it'll be a lot more work than to do it during the sketch phase. If you're someone like me who wants their liner to stand out, it's important to keep the size of your pen in mind. While you can draw everything without changing the size or without having pressure turned on if that's your style, it's good to generally have the outer lines be thicker and then fill them in with a smaller size. For example, I'll do the head in a thicker brush, but the nose, mouth, and eyes will get done with a smaller brush. Something I also do at the ends is add an extra border to further thicken the lines. Clip Studio Paint has a handy tool for this I recommend looking into. Before I start with my final colors, I quickly do a few tests to get a general gist of what I'll do. Doing it this way is easy for seeing where you will put your light and shadows, and you can play around with colors to get different vibes. I have quite a set color palette, especially since I'm working with characters that already understand with colors, so there's not that much to figure out. This is where color theory comes in. If you are looking for a specific mood or vibe, make sure you take note of this, as it makes things a whole lot easier. If you want something to feel cold and gloomy, you'll be able to get that effect more easily when you work with cold, darker colors such as blue or green, than with red or yellow. Using red or yellow would create a nice contrast though, so while it is harder, it's definitely fun to try that out. I'm making 3 different versions, where I try to have quite contrasting colors, except for the middle one, which is close to the usual colors I work with. I'm not worried about it looking clean yet, just focusing on the colors and having those look good. Since my characters have their set color palettes, I just work on top of that, and I keep adding gradients and highlights until I'm satisfied with what I've got. Once these were done, I went around asking for people to vote on the design they liked the most. It kept being a tie until I changed some colors in the third version, which made that the winning design. I do not have it recorded in time-lapse, but the colors I'll be using are from the adjusted third version. I now have an idea of what I'll do and will use this thumbnail to lay down my final colors. I start off with putting the flats down and making sure there are no gaps that show white. You can always change your background to black in the end to cover up these gaps. As you can see, I was struggling a bit at the start since the colors I was picking from the sketch weren't the same when I used them in the clean version. This is because I had set my layers to color, so they reacted to the grayscale gradient I'd used in the sketch. To solve this, I went to duplicate the gradient and worked the same way I did when I was doing the color thumbnails. Once I've got my flats, I start with shading. I'm a cell shader, so while I do use gradients, I mainly just do one layer of shadow and one with highlights. To do shadows, I pick a fitting color, in most cases a dark pinkish red, and put it on either multiply or overlay. I feel like multiply sometimes desaturates the colors too much. In that case, I put it on overlay and make my color a lot darker. For the highlights, I often set the layer to color dodge, glow dodge, or overlay. This really depends on what colors I'm using and what looks best. Definitely play around with this to see what you like most and what gives the best result. Once my shadows and highlights are done, it's time for the final adjustments. In my case, I cheat and just put down gradients to completely change things. This way I give a hint of the lighting and shadows all around. If you don't like the color but don't want to undo it and keep testing with different colors you have to handpick every time, change the color with the hue bar until you find a color you like. And that's it. Now I've got a finished cover for my comic. Thanks for watching and I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. See you!